All right, continuing with our Better Learning podcast, we have Philip here. Can you introduce yourself, please, and give us a fun fact and tell us what you do?
All right. I am Philip Riedel. I'm with NAC Architecture in Seattle, Washington. And I'm also on the global board for A4LE as the Pacific Northwest representative. Fun fact, well, I'm a dual citizen, Australian American. So I've been hanging out a little bit with our Australian friends there's about 6 of them who've come to the conference.
We've met a few of them. How often do you go back?
Not very often because it's a long trip, but I was there last year.
Very nice. Well, we're so happy to have you on the podcast. So really the main topic we've been talking about lately is radically student-centered, and wanted to find out, what does that mean to you?
It really means looking at all your decisions from the student standpoint. And then a good way to do that is to involve them in the design process. So having students on your design advisory committee, we do surveys of students. We do also student shadowing. So we will have architects go and follow a student around for a day through a school, and then observations of how this school works and stuff, and just always try to think about it from the student perspective.
That's really neat. So after you go and develop the space or help them with the space, how often do you go and take a look at how it's working or interview them and find out how they feel about it?
Yeah, we always try to go about a year after the school opened and do a post-occupancy evaluation that includes interviewing students in little groups a lot of times, or at least a survey goes out to students.
That's great. Okay, one to kind of shift for a second. So we had you spin the wheel, and you are our first person to get this question today, which is, can you share an example of when implementation didn't go exactly as planned? What did you learn? How did you adjust?
Yeah. One thing earlier in my career that happened was that we would design shared spaces for teachers to use for pull-out spaces or for small group work. And we found some of those were not being used the way we'd imagined. They're either just not used at all, or just used for storage, or they get enclosed for other purposes, or things like that. And so in sort of looking back at those and trying to figure out why some worked and some didn't, a big factor is transparency from the classroom, so that teachers can always see the students that are in the shared space. And even if there's another adult with them, just having that visual connection helps the teachers. It encourages the teachers to use them. They think about them more, and it allows them to keep supervision on those students.
That makes a lot of sense. And how do you do it? Do you get the buy-in from the beginning to make sure that they know that that's what's happening too?
Yes, and I think a critical moment is when you turn the building over to the school. I like to address an all-staff meeting, if I can, to explain what's behind the design. And then we leave behind a user's guide that explains what are the different facilities and spaces in the school, so that teachers know how to use them.
That's so smart. I was talking to a lady earlier at this conference who told me one of the biggest challenges, kind of sounds like the same thing with you, is that you design these spaces and then they're not used for how you've designed them, because there's so many people that have to come along with you. You know, school systems have been archaic, and then you build them something new and it's great and it's evolving, but you've got teachers and parents and students and administrators, and you have to make sure that they're all involved and they all understand what you're doing and why.
Right. Yeah. And teachers, they're not all one group. They have different ideas themselves on what's best and how to best do their job. So you've got to do a lot of listening.
Absolutely. We talk about that a lot, radically student-centered. We want to be radically student-centered, but we've got to support the teachers too and make sure we have the buy-in. So absolutely. So how do you see radically student-centered really evolving and evolving in your space over the next 10 to 15 years?
Yeah. So one thing that we're seeing just starting up right now, which I'm really excited about, is that locker rooms particularly in middle schools, have always been a difficult place where a lot of bullying happens in locker rooms, harassment of kids. Kids these days don't want to change in front of each other. their bodies are changing. They have levels of anxiety, and I'm not sure that kids ever wanted to change in front of each other. Really, I didn't enjoy it. So now we're seeing a shift towards instead of having boys and girls locker rooms, to have changing spaces, like private changing stalls where everybody changes, go in, lock the door, change your clothes, come out. And what that means is now we don't have to have separate locker rooms for boys and girls. It makes supervision a lot easier for the teachers and coaches. And it's something that we've seen implemented successfully in Long Beach in California. And now we're designing some in Edmonds in Washington. There's some in Mukilteo, Washington. And to me, it just makes so much sense that I think it's going to take off across the country as a new model. If people are sometimes resistant to change, and so it needs to be, first of all, it needs to be designed carefully so that it can work properly and not cause unanticipated problems, but also just explained to people so that they understand how it works.
Well, I think that's brilliant and important. We talk about privacy, right? People need their privacy, and bullying is such a big problem. So you've kind of started to crack the code on how do you bridge this so kids aren't no kid ever wanted to change in front of anybody. Kids have always been mean and been the, brunt of being made fun of, and bullying is so much worse these days. So you really are kind of cracking that code there. And it is important to have privacy. We talk to our kids about privacy. We talk to our kids about, you know, being able to not show their parts to other people and stranger danger and things like that. So why aren't we giving them their privacy? You guys are helping with that, and you're helping with them then not being bullied. And like you said, with the coaches and teachers, it's so much easier to supervise.
Yeah. We did a lot of work around restrooms for that. So changing the way that restrooms are designed so that they're more single occupant restrooms. And that's been successful. That's still evolving, and we're getting the best practices defined for doing that exactly right. And I see locker rooms as the next step in that evolution towards better schools.
Absolutely. So tell me, you said the school in Long Beach was the first one where you did
That's
the
the first one
lockers?
that I'm aware of that was fully built out and functioning. And they did that at Keller Middle School, and then my firm's working on Washington Middle School there, and they went and interviewed people and did a sort of post-occupancy evaluation on that. They liked it so much that they're just implementing it across the district. The parents loved it, the students loved it, so they're just all in on it.
Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations. You guys are doing wonderful work. Anything else you want to tell our viewers while you're here?
Just keep thinking about the kids, and things will get better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Philip, for being here. We just really appreciate it.